Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Mind-Boggling Concepts in the Torah. As per usual, put down any sharp objects and don't get too close to the microphone. We don't want to spread any of those diseases. So tonight, Parshas Pinchas, but I wanted to start, we're in the 3 weeks leading up to Tisha B'Av, which is a perfect time to talk about how to hate Jews.
What?
What? Exactly, what?
Wait, weren't we just saying that last week it was there are no bad Jews?
There are no bad Jews, right.
Now
right.
we're learning to hate Jews?
How to hate Jews, exactly. How do you hate Jews? Right?
With passion? Why would you hate Jews?
Well, there are people who do some really bad things, like George Soros is a particularly... I don't have adjectives bad enough that can describe him, but he's a pretty awful person. He's a pretty bad piece of work. Right? There's bad Jews and there's bad Jews with money. And it's a whole it's a whole different game. I remember this is my wife has a great aunt, and it's a great story. So she was visiting once. This is years and years ago, and she was particularly irked that I was a rabbi or was Orthodox. It does something to people. I remember when I was in Asia Torah in the early, I got there in 1978, so there's still a lot of Holocaust survivors. I remember one time, bring me back to the story of my wife's great aunt, but one day I walked into Rav Nach's office, and he says to me, "Steve, sit down, I need to tell you a story." So stop me if you've heard this story. So he said he was friendly with Rav Nachman Kahana. If you've ever heard of Amir Kahana, he started the I think it was called Kach. It was Jewish Defense League in America. He moved to Israel, became a politician, and he was saying, this stuff about the Palestinians are going to come kill you, you're making a big mistake. No one wanted to listen to him. He basically killed him off. The left killed him off. So he got assassinated, but they really were very happy. They did not mourn one iota for him, even though he was a member of parliament. So, and now they regret it big time, because if he was still alive, he could have saved us. But anyway, getting back, so he had a brother who was a Rabbi in the old city of Jerusalem, and so he told Rav Noach this story. Rav Noach told me. So the night before he met Rav Noach, he told him that he has a Hader in the old city, and he has these little boys like 10 years old, 9 years old, 8 years old, something like that. And one of the little boys came to him and told him, "Rabbi, I have to tell you what happened to me yesterday." He says, "What's that?" So the boy was in the hospital, and his mother was very sick, and he's in the waiting room, and he's saying Tehillim, and in walks into the waiting room an old kabutznik. Now they don't make these guys anymore. It's a lost. They made the mold, but if you've ever go look it up, you can see pictures of them. They were tough as nails, sweet as pie, generous like no end, but completely anti-religious. And these are the people that literally, with their bare hands, built the land of Israel, dug the trenches, drained the swamps, fought the Arabs. They did everything. They were total socialists, hated Torah, hated Judaism. They would just be, and I was coming into Israel as a secular Jew from England. So they loved me until I, started wearing a kippah. And then it was like, what are you doing?
And how dare you?
What?
And how dare you?
They were so conflicted, because on the one hand, they were happy I was moving to Israel. But on the other hand, it was a bit of a slap in the face. So it was difficult. But and you meet. So anyway, so this old kabutznik shows up, right? And he walks into the waiting room, and he goes over to the little boy, and he says to him, "What are you doing? This is Israel. This is not this is not America. Keep to your own business kind of stuff. Everyone's business is everyone else's business.
Because they consider each other family.
It's family, and not only that, but my kids died for you, or I fought for you, etc., etc., etc. So we're all in this game together." So he goes up to the little boy. So what are you doing? He says, I'm saying to Hillel psalms for my mother, who's sick. So he goes crazy. He starts laying into this little boy. He says, "You religious people are what's keeping this country backwards. You make up your mind. Either it's your Torah and your voodoo silliness, or it's science. But don't bring your mother to the hospital and then say prayers. If God's going to save her, then stay home. And if God's not going to save her, what are you saying to Helen for? Like one or the other. It's you keeping this country backwards. You people are keeping this country backwards, and in your old ways that don't work anymore, right?" So the little boy, he don't know what to say. He says, "What are you doing here?" So he says, "I've come to pick up the body of my son."
Mm.
So he says, "What do you mean?" So he says, "My son's been sick for a very long time, and there's nothing they can do. They've tried everything. And he took a turn for the worse. And they called me just a little while ago, and they said, you need to come into the hospital to pick up the body of your son. He's going to die this evening." So he said that we're making a last-ditch operation, but the chances of anything is just not. It's not gonna. It's not gonna work.
Mm-hmm.
Just better prepare for yourself for the worst and come and pick up the body. I don't know if doctors would say these kind of things today, but in Israel they're kind of blunt. So anyway, so which is a mile, which is something. So anyway, so the little boy says to the old man, he says, "Well, maybe you want to say some Tehillim then." Well, with that, the old man lays into this kid even more. Like, "Leave us alone. We don't want to hear about your silly stuff. Stop preaching your religion on us." Blah, 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 blah. Okay, fine. Finishes. The little boy goes into his little corner, and he keeps saying his Tehillim. And the old man, the old kabutznik, he sits down and waits. An hour goes by, 2 hours go by, 3 hours go by. And eventually, a doctor comes into the waiting room. He walks up to the old man, and he says, I can't explain it. I don't know what happened, but your son will live."
Wow.
The old man stands up, and he says, "Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad."
That gives a person chills.
Yeah. So Rav says to me, oh boy, don't miss him. So Rav said to me, he said, "Does that story make any sense to you, Steve?" I said, "No, not at all." So he says it makes perfect sense. You walk into a waiting room in Israel, not America, in Israel, and you see a little boy saying to him, you know exactly what he's doing. Even if it was in America, you see somebody in the corner praying, right? Whatever it is, you don't go up and say, "What are you doing?" And then you don't give him a hard time, right? Little boy wants to do whatever he wants to do for his mother who's sick. Let him do it. What are you bothering him for? Because he wants to say it. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
And he's 70, 80 years of socialism, and he's not giving it up.
It's deep inside.
It's not just deep inside, but it's conviction. And he's going, "God, you're not going to get me. You're not going to get me. I'm going to the end." Follow? But the Almighty has everybody's number.
So are you saying that he made his son sick so that he would get to that point?
I'm not going to go there. That part I'm not going to say. I'm just saying that he made him better to wake him up. Then the Almighty has Almighty knows how to get through. Sometimes it's getting sick, sometimes it's getting better. So the Almighty knew his number. You can't win against God.
No, you cannot.
Right. So the Almighty knew he was holding on. You're not going to get me. He was expecting the bad news. He was not expecting the good news.
Oh, now I totally get it.
So when he heard the good news, what really was going on came out. That's why I'm saying there's no such thing as a bad Jew. We're all fighting. The fact that we say Shema Yisrael, and the fact that we daven, and the fact that we say Baruch Hashem, and the fact that we say brachas and say, doesn't mean that we mean it. We're big into saying one thing and meaning something completely different. I'm not saying everybody. I'm not saying all over the place, right? But we put a lot of emphasis on saying the right thing at the right time, and it doesn't necessarily mean a lot. Mm-hmm. So he was real. He was saying what he really believed. Right? When you live what you really believe, then some really good stuff comes out. So every Jew is doing the same thing. In other words, every Jew, I would say every Jew, there's a lot of Jews that profess a belief in God but don't mean it. And the Almighty's got their number, and it's going to come out.
It's going to anyway. They don't really believe?
No,
they don't really believe it. It's just like the old kabutznik. They say it when they say it. I was in the supermarket the other day. This was actually a while ago, just before Pesach, and I overheard a conversation. It was quite loud, and I overheard this conversation of one woman to another woman, and saying, getting ready for Pesach. And the other woman who was more traditional, she said, "Oh, Pesach is the bane of my existence. I hate Pesach. All the cooking and the cleaning and the food and the serving and the meals and all the people and the mess. I hate it."
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say to her, if you hated it, you wouldn't do it.
It's true.
She identifies that she hates it. She doesn't hate it. She's focusing on the fact that there's bits of it she makes her uncomfortable. But if you hated it, you wouldn't do it. I remember one time I was at a bris, and the mother was kind of just beginning to get involved in Torah, and it was very emotional. And the mother turned to me and said, "This is barbaric," at the bris, right? So I was thinking, I didn't say it. I said, "It's not a this, it's a you. You are a barbarian." You go to Borneo and you find people sticking bones through their noses, right? And one guy says to the other, "This is barbaric." This is, well, you've got one in your nose too. You're a barbarian. Right? But doesn't want to identify as a barbarian. People don't want to identify as pagans. Right? So this mother was saying, like, this is barbaric. Right? So you're doing it. So you said, so what she was saying is she was being totally real with it, which is very healthy. To say, I find this particularly objectionable. Now you've got something to talk about. Now you've got something to work with.
Because they're at least being honest in how they perceive it.
Yeah, I tell you, I had there's a long story. I'll cut to the chase on it. But I had this argument with this conservative rabbi. He was the rabbi of the biggest conservative shul this side of the Mississippi, and his shul was near our shul, and his president was learning with us, and so the chairman of the educational board was learning with us, and the chairman wanted to bring in an Aish Torah program into his shul, and this rabbi went bananas. So this guy, his name's Rick, he said, "Could you mind?" I tried being reasonable with him. It's not anti-conservative. It's not like, it was just a sort of pav. It wasn't criticizing conservative, and lots of conservative reform shuls used to have this program, but he went nuts. So he said, "Would you mind speaking to him?" So I did. I spoke to him. He was totally not. I said to him, "Rabbi, listen, let's sit down and talk." Right? He said to me, "Rabbi, the only way I let this program in our shul is if you do X, Y, and Z. He had a whole list of demands. I said to him, Rabbi, listen, you're a conservative rabbi. I'm an Orthodox rabbi. At least that's what I call myself. So you know the things I can't do, and I know the things you can't do. Right? Wouldn't it be nice? Let's get together and just discuss how to make this work so you can do something that works for you and I can do something that works with me. Right? Put out things that you know are going to be difficult for me. So he said to me, Rabbi, that's my final offer. Take it or leave it. Mm-hmm. So I said to him, Rabbi, this is the time of Oslo. Remember Oslo? Another piece of stupidity, right? When we're going to make peace for the Arabs and the Palestinians and Clinton and Arafat. And
look, there's Barry flying around.
Yeah, right. So I knew how he felt about it. So I said to him, do you think the Palestinians and the Israelis can make peace? He says, yes, I do. I said, the gap between the Palestinians and the Jews, is that a big gap? He says, yes. Is it bigger than the gap between me and you? He said, no. So I said, if you think they can make peace when their gap is so big, don't you think we can make peace? Oh, you think I insulted his wife, like he went bananas. He hated that, right? 3 months later, he was davening an Eish Torah.
What happened?
His son got cancer.
Ouch.
Yeah. Now, you and I both know you don't need to daven an Eish Torah to talk to God.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But he didn't think so. He knew in his mind, Eish Torah, I'm not saying Eish Torah per se, but the Orthodox movement per se, the Orthodox movement is where God is. He's a phony. And he knows he's a phony. And he feels bad for being a phony. So he wants someone to tell him he's not a phony. And that's why he was asking me, we want, for him to agree. These are the things to legitimize who he is and what he stands for. But when his son got cancer, he go, I don't care anymore. And he came to an Eish Torah.
You mean, when you say he didn't care anymore, he just let go of the phoniness?
Yeah, he let go of the phoniness.
That's encouraging.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's no bad Jews. Deep down, they just need something to trigger them. Something, the Almighty knows what he's doing. Right? Look at October 7th. October 7th, there's been an incredible awakening for an awful lot of Jews all over the world. Who would have thought they come and kill us? And then a lot of Jews go, Judaism, I wouldn't say they recognize that Judaism, a lot have. There's a lot of people moving, but they've recognized that the secular, leftist, liberal ideologies are silly.
What about people that we learned about in the Masilat Yesharim, where it says that when it talks about humility and that someone who pretends to be humble and care about others, is there hope for that person too?
Yeah, that's 100%. There's hope for every Jew.
But not Korach.
Korach is a very interesting character. That's going beyond my pay grade. The Talmud says there's 10 people that don't have a chelik and olam haba. They cannot be redeemed. I don't know what that means. It's not something that I think is relevant to us because you're not going to meet one of these people. There were 10. It's done.
You mean he was one of a kind and no one?
Yeah.
No one could ever even come close to that. And so he was the only one that there was no hope for?
He's the only one there's no hope for, right?
Baruch Hashem.
Right, that's right, Baruch Hashem. There's a certain kind, it's represented by 10, there's a certain kind of distorted thinking that leads you down a terrible path that is necessary. You have to have these 10. The world has to have them. And in that, they might have a schus, a merit. And that's why I don't know.
You mean they have the merit because they became an example to teach others not to go down the same path?
Right. It's like we were talking about this last week. The hardest thing in the world to understand is hatred. We don't understand hatred. Right? The only person who understood it was Bilam. We experience it. We might hate, right? But we don't understand it. And the reason is because everything in existence, the only way we can understand anything is we experience it in some way. So you can't talk about a color you've never seen. You can't talk about food you've never tasted. If you've never seen it, you never heard it, you never had experience of it, you can't imagine it, you can't conceive it, you can't. It has no meaning to you. You can't. It's not. It has not. The words don't mean anything to you, right? So everything in existence is an expression of love. Every aspect of everything, but there's one part of the order of existence that's hate. It's sort of like salt. Salt, if you have it by itself, it's the same thing as the chalbana, the one of the ingredients of the kataris that's bitter, that has an awful taste. What is it doing there? Because you have to have salt. Before I knew anything, and I'm not saying I know anything now, so I'm still in the before, but before I knew anything, I would never have imagined when I first heard you put salt in cake. I go, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, to balance the flavors.
Right, but if you had a cake and you didn't know anything about cooking, and you said recreate the cake, right, just by imagination, just figure it out, right? You'd never think salt was in there,
right?
Right, but you have to have salt because salt is what bounces off the flavors. It builds on the flavors. You have to have hate, so everything else fights against it. There has to be a core there, so it's only one moment, in every day that has this experience, this reality in it, so that everything else can build off of. It's in the same way that if you are not angry, King Solomon said, Shlomo Melech said that he who spares the rod hates the child. So he doesn't mean if you love your children, you beat them regularly. He doesn't mean that. Despite what people might say. He doesn't mean that. He means that if you don't get angry at your children, it means you don't care. You know my Bernie story, right? Bernie, right? He says to me, this is 40 odd years ago, and he was in his 60s then. He said, now I understand something that I said to my mother 50 years ago when he was 10 years old. Right? He was playing in his best friend Johnny's backyard in the sandbox, and Johnny's mother comes out and says, Johnny, time for dinner, come inside. And Johnny turned to Bernie and he said to him 3. That's all he said was 3. And Bernie said, I didn't know what he was talking about. It wasn't my mother. We kept on playing. After that 5 minutes, Johnny's mother comes out again. Now she's really upset. She says, I told you, inside now for dinner, right? And Johnny turned to me and turned to Bernie and he said, that's 2, keep playing. Okay. Finally, his mother comes out again. Now she's like steam's coming out of her ear. She's mad as anything. She says, that's it. You don't come in right now. You're getting a spanking and going straight to bed without dinner. So Johnny turns to me and says, that's 3. I've got to go. Right? You know, your kids know you. The people who know you the best are your children. Like a father just asked me, for meaningful reasons, appropriately and everything, should I lie to my children? Right? It was a meaningful thing. Right? Like it was not. It was a very devoted father who was struggling with his children, and then an issue came up, and it would be easier to deal with it if the children thought it was not on the table. So he says, "Can I lie?" I said, "Absolutely not." Right? It's one of the great rules of parenting: never lie to your children. There are some exceptions, but it's incredibly rare that it'll ever come up. And the reason is not because it's unjustified or improper or immoral or anything like that. Is your children know when you're lying. They know. They can smell you like
yeah.
You're never going to fake them out. Right?
Especially these kids.
What's that?
Especially these kids now.
Yeah, especially that's true. Especially these kids now, right? They're much more
Sensitive to it.
right, sensitive to it. Very good. So anyway, so Bernie goes back to his mother. He goes and he says to his mother, suddenly for 50 years he didn't understand what he said. He says, "Ma, how come you never shout at me?"
She probably was like, "What are you talking about?"
I don't know what she said, right? But he didn't know what he said. Right? He didn't know why he said that for 50 years now, and it was very sad. He understood why he said it because he understood his mother didn't care about him
At all, or just in that instance?
at all.
Oh, that's sad.
It was very sad, very sad. So anyway, back to I surprised myself that I remember where we come. Right,
Your wife's great aunt. Yeah.
my wife's great aunt. Very good. So my wife's great aunt, she was visiting, and that whole generation was socialists and anti-religious, and the early days, not the early days, but the height of the conservative movement, the reform movement in America was taking over, and it's the new way, and it's we figured it out, and we got a secular Judaism. You're the best of all worlds. You can be American and enjoy the American way of life and be Jewish. You don't have to choose between the two, right? They thought they figured it out. Of course they didn't. But nevertheless, by the time I saw her, they were starting to see that this whole thing did not work. So she says to me, like trying to make a dig, that her late husband, never believed in God. Right? So I said to her, well, now he does.
Ouch. I bet that didn't go over very well.
It did not go over very well. Right? And Senator Stone, may rest in peace, big Seicher Sadik Lebracha, he used to say to me, he says, there's no retort for a witty answer. Like if you got, like, one of my favorites is Disraeli. So an anti-Semite comes up. Do you remember Disraeli is this Jew running the Houses of Parliament, like, at the height of the British Empire? Like it must have irked people no end, right? So this anti-Semite comes up to him one day and he says to him, "What's the difference between a Jew and a pig?"
Oh, I feel like I've heard this before, but I can't remember what it is. It was good though.
It was good. Disraeli said about 3 feet. And you just, now you understand Disraeli. To come up with that answer on the spot like that, you get one shot at it, right? And you're not at the ballpark.
Oh, he must have been very quick on his feet.
100%. You don't get to be the Prime Minister of England in those days. Even today, it's not a piece of cake. But then, right, at that time, right, you had the crown jewels. So anyway, how to hate Jews? We're in the 3 weeks. How to hate Jews. So that what you're not allowed to do, what the problem is, that the destruction of the temple, what we're suffering from still today, is what's called Sinat Chinam.
Mm-hmm.
Not Sina. Sinat Chinam. Literally translates as Sinat, hatred, Chinam, free hatred. It's not a problem hating Jews. There are people that are low life scum, despicable, terrible. I mean, after October 7th, to some of the people who are fighting Netanyahu, and some of the things they said, it's, after they hear that Hamas saying that we felt emboldened by the infighting amongst the Jews, for anyone to protest, let alone say the kind of things that some of them say, is beyond the power of anything meaningful, reasonable. These are scummy people. right?
It's irrational.
It's evil, absolutely evil. It's not something we tolerate. But that's okay, right? That's not Sinat Chinam. What's Sinat Chinam?
It's
Right?
when it affects you. Your hatred of somebody affects you.
Well, hatred is affecting you. It's an emotion. So
Okay, I know you taught us.
that's okay. So the term chinam is used in the Torah a few times, and one of them is by the fish. That the Jews said, we remember the fish that we had for free, chinam. We remember the fish that we had for free in Egypt. It was chinam, free. Right? Now, this is so absurd. It's, this is why I tell everybody, you've got to put down every sharp object, because it's just, right? So it's like, you come home one day and you're holding, like you're using this pen, right? And it's not this pen, but it's like this pen. And it's lacquered, and it's walnut, and it's gold inlaid and engraved, and it's got gems in it. I mean, it's mind-boggling expensive. You can buy pens like this. It still writes. It's the same ink in every other pen. It doesn't write any differently. I mean, they're all good pens and they're bad pens, but if you spend $25 on a pen, that's probably about as best you're ever going to get in terms of writing capacity. Right? When I was growing up, you had I went to school in England. We had fountain pens. I don't know if you remember those. Right? We didn't have quills. I remember my fountain pen, and there was a difference between a really good fountain pen and a cheap fountain pen, right? And they were all awful. They didn't like us using the school I went to. They didn't like us using ballpoint pens. It was like, oh my goodness, like
that's too bourgeois.
That's right, please, right? So very snobby. So anyway, so this pen, like your father, and the guy's wife, he says, wow, that's amazing. Where'd you get that pen? Must have cost a fortune. Why'd you spend so much money on the pen? So he says, no, it didn't cost anything at all. It was free. Really? How was it free? He says, well, they gave it to me with a Bentley. Right? I bought a Bentley and it came with a free pen. So when you buy a car, it comes with free things. If you buy a cheap car like me, it comes with a jack if you're lucky. All cars used to come with jacks. Now they come with these cheap jacks that you just can't use. But anyway, right? But you buy a Bentley, it comes with maybe a pen, maybe other fancy stuff. You follow?
Mm-hmm.
So they said that we remember the fish that we had for free. What do you mean free? You were slaves. It's like getting a job and they don't pay you anything, but they give you free lunch. Oh, we remember the free lunch. You didn't get paid. You were slaves. In fact, Rashi says they didn't even get free fish. Right? They had to, if they didn't give them straw for free, they're certainly not giving them fish for free. So what does it mean free? So you see, it's a type of expression. Let's use the Bentley again as an example. Right? You see a sign outside the Bentley store, right? Free. We're giving them away this week only. We're giving them away. So you go into the store. You say to the guy, "How much are you giving them away for?" It says, "I'm giving them away. How much are you giving them away for?" Right? Bentley, I think, cost about $500,000. I don't know exactly.
Wow.
Right? So it says we're giving them away for $60,000. Now, for a regular car, that's a lot of money. You could buy 3 cars for that, 2 cars at least, right? Right? Bentley, that's basically free. Like, oh my God! I remember when I was living in Israel, and they had a terrible problem with inflation, and it was just impossible because people would get paid, and by the time, as soon as they got paid, they went to the store and bought whatever they could, because by the time the end of the month came, the money was worth a lot less. So they had to, right? People used to have there were coins for the phones. In those days, all the phones, it wasn't like it is today. It wasn't like in America, you put a quarter in or whatever the money was. You had to have a special coin for the phone. So to beat inflation, people would buy these coins because those did not change. Right? It was one Simon, it was called one Simon. People used to walk around with these Simonim around their neck to try and beat inflation because they were worth the same amount every month. Right? It's still 5 minutes, whatever it had to be. So it was a terrible problem. So one time what they did to try and beat it, they kept doing these things. The government kept doing these things where they would forbid stores from changing prices. Right? Whatever it was, that's what you had to keep it. And it was usually staples like bread and cheese and things like that, which are very sensitive in Israel because poor people, that's what they rely on. So they said you can't change the prices. So what the government would do is, the day of the payday, the beginning of the month, they would float the currency. They would devalue the currency. So they make it worth, put another zero on it. Whatever it was worth yesterday is worth 10% less, right? And then they would force the stores, they couldn't change the prices, right? So they're trying to battle inflation to stop the people just keep buying. The stores wouldn't put prices on anything because it just kept changing all the time. Right? So this is what they did. Well, one year, what they did was really dramatic. They said, you can't. So it was a big problem because people try to get paid early because they knew they were doing it every month after payday. You get paid, but the next month your boss had to raise your salary. But that month you got paid $100, let's say, but now it's worth $90, worth 10% less, or whatever they devalued the currency by. There was a whole black market. People would buy dollars and things like that. But anyway. So one year, what they did is they put a freeze on everything. On everything. Right? You couldn't change the prices on everything, on anything. Right? And I don't think they meant it. I don't think they thought it through very well. But the car resellers, the people sold, the car manufacturers went crazy because it's one thing to lose, 5 cents, 10 cents on a roll of bread, and you can factor that in. But it's another thing to lose $10,000 on a car. They were just losing loads of money on the cars. So by the end of the month, the cars were worth. You could buy a car. And I know people did it, like a brand new car for like a ridiculously cheap amount, and they had to sell them. They couldn't change the price. It was illegal. I don't know how I got into that. How do I get onto that? Oh, yeah. So basically giving it away. So he said the fish was free. So relative to what it used to cost, it's free, right? So relative, right, to the fish they had in the desert, the fish in Mitzrayim was free, right? You follow? Why was it free? What did they have to pay for the fish in the desert?
They had to be slaves.
No, in the desert.
Oh, in the desert, they had fish in the desert. They didn't have. Oh, yes. Now I'm remembering. They had to think about what the fish was, what kinds, the flavoring, the spices while they were eating the manna.
Right. The manna would taste anything you were thinking of, but you had to think it. You had to think fish. Now, what kind of fish do you like? I like tuna. I like salmon. What kind of flavorings do you want on it? You want it with peas? You want it with mushrooms? You want it with potatoes, asparagus? You want it hot? You want it chilled? You want it rare? You have to think those things, right? And in the middle of thinking about it, if you go, oh, look, there's a rabbit. Boom, gone. You're eating tofu. And no flavor whatsoever. So you had to think. People just want to come. What?
It's like prayer when you're really talking to God with, with your heart.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter like what's happening around you. You're like in this conversation. You're so in tuned with just the conversation. Nothing can interrupt you. But if it's not an intense thinking, then you're easily distracted.
easily distracted, right? You just don't see, you break out of it, you lost the whole experience, right? That's how our lives should be, totally intense experience, right? You're talking to your kids, you're talking to your spouse, you're talking to the Almighty, you're talking to your friends, you're talking to yourself, you're having this intense experience. But you have to think. If you're not thinking, it doesn't mean anything. A lot of people, they don't want to think. So October 7th woke everybody up. The arguments were there. I remember one of the most potent story I heard was about a woman who was one of the leaders of one of these communities on the border next to Gaza that were decimated from the attacks from Hamas. And so someone was interviewing her and asked her how many synagogues were destroyed by Hamas on October 7th. And she said none. So the guy said, wow, how was that possible? He says, because there aren't any. So she told a story that was very telling, that there was a rabbi just before, a few months before October 7th, who tried to do a basketball game between yeshiva and the boys in the community. And she said, I know exactly what he was trying to do. He was trying to acclimate us to them. And so bring us along, because they were very anti-religious, these communities. Peace now, and we can love everybody, etc., etc. And so she wrote him a letter that said, if you come to our community with this program, I will personally stand at the gates and bar you from entering.
Wow.
So is that hatred?
Yes, that's hatred.
But is that free hatred?
Yes, that's free hatred.
It's free hatred, not plain hatred. Okay.
Right, that's Sinat Chinam, because she suffered from it. But she realized she made a big mistake. There are still people who don't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
So they just keep going. Now, the truth of the matter is, we've all got this junk. It's just different things. There are some people like this rabbi, like this woman, like a lot of other people, that when faced with the realities of their insanity, our insanity, go, you know what, we made a mistake. It's much easier to think, much more powerful, more. Everybody thinks they're open-minded and thinking, but when you're challenged, are you just caught up in your own, echo chamber, as they call it.
Mm-hmm.
So before October 7th, you couldn't talk to anybody. I remember this was just before was it Ehud Barak? I think it was. No, it was Ariel Sharon who gave back the Gaza Strip. And everybody going, this is going to be incredible. We're giving them, it's their own homeland. We want a homeland, right? So I called up this guy. I think his name is Wolfenson. He was the head of the IMF, I think. Yeah, I was living in Washington at the time, so I called him up. Somehow I got his number. I called him up, and he said, "We figured it out. We're going to get peace. It's going to be amazing. What are they going to do? They're paying the kibbutzim that they're expelling from the Gaza Strip to leave the greenhouses in place. So this is costing us a fortune. We're spending money. We're paying them not to destroy them, because what they did was when they left, they destroyed a lot of the buildings. The Israelis did. So they paid them not to destroy the greenhouses. This is a huge economy that they brought in, right? Mm-hmm. So I said to them, let's sit and talk. And I remember him saying to me, "You think I'm gonna talk about politics in the world with a rabbi? You guys don't know anything." Right? Mm. So we all know what happened. The Hamas came in and they burnt down the greenhouses. And he was like, I don't think he learned his lesson.
I'm in a situation like that where I've noticed certain blocks in a certain individual, and I've tried to get through. I've tried every tactics that I have at my disposal, and I think I've finally become frustrated, and I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah, it's just there's a certain point, right? How to hate Jews. It's like you try. See, it's the not trying that's the problem. But
I
you
tried.
try. Yeah,
I
you
tried.
try, and they just people. There's a great. I think it's a what's his name? English Rosh Hashiva wrote the book Strive for Truth. I forget.
Dessler.
Dessler, Rabbi Dessler. So I think he says, I believe it's him who says that the Talmud says about Rabbi Eliezer ben Dodiah. So it says Eliezer ben Dodiah says there wasn't a prostitute in the world that he did not know. Right? Some people collect stamps. He collected prostitutes. So I think stamps is better. So he heard about this woman that lived a long way away, charging exorbitant amount of money. But a hobby is a hobby. So he goes, finds her, right? And she was so turned off from him, right? That she said to him, like, you're the biggest lowlife I've ever met, right? Basically, right? And he was so insulted that he turned around, did tshuva, and died, right? And a voice comes out from heaven and says, Rabbi Eliezer ben Dodiah entered the kingdom of God.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So one of the great Torah luminaries, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he cried when he heard the story. And he said, there's not enough that some people, they acquire Olam Haba in an instant. For some people, it takes them their whole lives. And some people, they do it in an instant. But not only that, but they call him Rabbi. Right? So Rabbi Dessler, I believe is him who says it. He says, what's going on here? So he says, first of all, he says, what is he crying for? So he did tshuva. He said, because every day, this is the day that God has made. Nagila v'nismachado. If you were designing the day for your children, we don't design the days for our children. We have an influence on them, but we don't design the day, right? So if we would design the day, we'd wake them up, right? We take them over to the Potomac or whatever, the East River, or maybe the Atlantic, and we say, look, there's a God, and you split the ocean. Right? Now do you believe? For crying out loud. And then we bring Moses in, and then we were designing the day, right? To wake our children up to the biggest realities of life. Well, the Almighty loves our children more than we love them. So every day, and the Almighty loves us more than we love our children. So the Almighty is sending us stuff to wake us up. But what do? We go, that's a good point. It's easy to see with other people that are close-minded, but Noah used to say, since everybody's crazy, so someone said to him, if everyone's crazy, that includes us. He says, yes. He says, what's the difference? He says, you got to know you're crazy. You got to know you're crazy. Like, here you are, whatever it is you're working on in life, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Money, learning, parenting, marriage, whatever it is you're working on, right? You talk to God, he'll give it to you. So what's the problem? We don't believe it. We don't do it. I don't know. It's like,
but God would just give it to you like that for nothing?
You're right. Where you think you earn it? I'm having this argument with someone.
Don't you need to put some like real efforts in your beliefs, in changing your beliefs, and maybe I have some misunderstanding here too.
I was having this argument with somebody, and said, I said, obviously, October 7th, you can't ascribe it all to the IDF. The IDF certainly did something, but most of it is the hand of God. He says, no. It's all the IDF. 400 missiles rained on Israel, and for most of them, it's, the damage is incredibly minimal. They hit places that no one was there. Absurd, absolutely incredible. But forget all the other stuff that happened, right? The Talmud says, Avodah Zarah says, God, one of the things that's God's is war.
Mm-hmm.
When I was growing up, we learned that the First World War started because they killed Archduke Ferdinand, which is absurd. Right? They're not complete stupid idiots. The whole of Europe were filled with fools. We're going to go to war over something like this. No, the Almighty wanted a war. Right? So the Almighty wanted Ukraine and Russia to go to war. Why? I mean, it's the most stupid war. Right? They're both bogged down, and it's a sinkhole. It's costing them a fortune, both of them.
So why did Hashem want that to happen?
Exactly. That was my question. I like the question. Good question.
I'm assuming you have an answer.
He wants both of them to become destitute.
No.
That's an interesting answer, though.
What's that?
It was an interesting answer.
Yeah. No. It's very much simpler than that. He wanted Syria to fall.
So Russia can't help him.
Russia can't help him. Right? Russia was propping up Assad.
Oh, now that you say it, it seems so obvious.
It seems so obvious, right? You understand? The IDF did that.
It's funny because I think even people within the IDF can see God more clearly than the people.
Oh yeah, 100%.
IDF.
Yeah, no, they've been saying it.
There
are a lot of them been saying this is just amazing. The stuff that happened and that's coming out more and more every day about the things you don't hear about. It's just mind-boggling. Mind-boggling, right? So that's all for all of us a wake-up call. So Eliezer ben Dodaya, he got his wake-up call, this woman, like the kabutznik, right? That was his wake-up call. Right? We all got a friend said, the whole of Israel got the bucket of ice on top of them. They finally got it. Right? The whole country shifted to the right. Right? It's a whole new world. Like America, same thing. They got it. I think Israel also has what happened in Israel also has impacted the politics of Israel, politics of America. So anyway, so he says, so Rabbi Dessler says it's not someone who's like Eliezer ben Dodaya, right? Even amongst thieves, or even amongst drug addicts, or even amongst smokers, or even amongst gamblers, right? There are within the group. There's the guys who do it too much, right? And those people are critical of the guy who does it too much. You really shouldn't gamble so much. You shouldn't drink that much. You should, right? There's the group of they have whatever they have, and then there's a guy who's extreme, and everybody's on his case or her case, right? So there wasn't anyone like Eliezer ben Dodaya. So it means wherever he was, someone was giving him a hard time. Right? He had family, he had neighbors, he had people he hang out with, and there was probably other people doing the same kind of junk. That's why people who do stuff, right, to hang out with people who do the same stuff. Right? That's why a shul and being part of a community is so important. Because when you're part of a community, especially in the old days, it's not the same anymore, but it's not entirely the same. But when you lived in a shtetl and you only had one shul, you can't stray too far. You have to listen to people. The secular life is very destructive because there's no one keeping track with you. Right? Anybody who's watching this video, right? Get your husband. You want your husband, so you'll save you an awful lot of heartache. You don't have a problem with this, but right, get him to go to davening every day, right? Being part of a minyan, a community, a regular minyan, a regular community, they'll tell him what he needs to hear. You don't have to it saves you an awful lot of problems. So Eliezer ben Dodai had people telling him, right? It's not possible that people weren't telling him, this is not appropriate. The Talmud knew about him, so there must have been people. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So he says it wasn't that this woman finally got through. It's because she was the last one. She
After
added,
so many people did their little dent.
right. So then you're when you give this person a hard time, that's why there's a mitzvah tahacha. If no one likes giving tahacha, it'd be much nicer if there was no mitzvah tahacha. The Talmud says, how far do you have to go to give tahacha? And there's two opinions. One of them is till they shout at you. I don't want to hear it.
Shouted at. I'm done.
I'm done. Right. There's a second opinion till they hit you.
It felt like a hit too. I'm done. I'm 2 for 2 here, Rabbi.
Okay, but they said the point is that why does the Torah require us? Because yes, please God, you get through, but it's not a failure that you didn't get through. Because you were necessary, so the next person got through, right? My father-in-law, may rest in peace. He was a lifelong smoker in a family that never smoked.
Yeah.
He used to get grief from everybody, right? Who was the one who got him to stop smoking? His grandson, my son.
Oh yeah.
When he was 4 years old, right? He wanted to pick him up. He was very close with my son. And he wanted to pick him up. And my son said to him, Grandpa, you smell. I'm not sure if he said it like that. Something along those lines. That was it. Then people said a lot worse than that, right? But nothing got through. It wasn't because of the words. It was because 25 people had been on his case, and my grandson was the kabutznik, was the one. Your son will live. Right? It was the one message on top of all of those things. It was the woman in the town next to the Gaza Strip who had a long line of rabbis trying to do programs of people messaging, right? So that when she got it, she got it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're all on this same program.
So I don't have to feel bad not worrying about this person anymore, because I could see this path this person's going on, and I can see a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Not for this person, but I'm not going to say more than that, but another person.
Right.
And I can see it. I can see it. It's like, I don't know why it's so clear to me, but I can see it. And maybe I didn't say the right words. I don't know, but they're very upset. Very, very, very upset.
Right. So that's the hatred for Jews that is appropriate. Right? But it's not Sinat Chinam. We're going to stop Sinat Chinam. That was the problem. That's the hatred that we're not allowed to have. That's the destructive hatred.
Are we bringing? Is this relevant because of we can hate Zimri?
No.
Pinchas, the Parsha.
No, it's related to. Although that's a very good point. I like that. That's a very good question. It's not. The Torah doesn't direct us to hate Zimri. It directs us to hate. I mean, it points it out, but it doesn't. But it points us to Midian, which is very relevant to our concept, because Zimri was just caught up in the craziness, which we'll get to. Hang on a second. There's a very, very good point, but causeless hatred, Sinat Chinam, is like the fish, right? There's no free fish in Egypt. There's no free pen. There's no free lunch. You're paying for it.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking it's free is insanity. Thinking you can stand in the middle of Tel Aviv and block the traffic and say that Netanyahu, I like him, but I don't think he's the Mashiach. But to say the kind of things that they say about this guy is obscene. It's Sinat Chinam. You're willing to bring down the whole country and have Hamas do all this stuff. You're not willing to pay the price. Sinat Chinam means you're not living with the price you're really going to pay. You think you can hate this guy, and it has no cost whatsoever to it. You're not aware of the real price you're going to pay for. And that's Sinat Chinam. That's the hatred that unfortunately people have, and you can't have. And they're self-destructive. It's the hatred you see when people get divorced. Right?
They want to destroy each other, and in the process, they're destroying their kids.
They're destroying their kids. So you say to them, like, why are you doing this? It's destroying your kids. It's just, no, you don't understand. It's like he's got to get his just desserts, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That is Sinat Chinam. They think they can get away with it. They don't appreciate they're not aware of the cost that it's really going to bear upon them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hatred. Now, why is this not that is the hatred we can't have? The George Soroses of this world are good, legitimate cases for hate. These kind of Jews you got to hate. Yair Lapid, another guy. Right?
Bennett.
I'm not sure. Maybe. But definitely, like, these people, there are people, unfortunately, right? But the Torah blames Midian. It's very interesting that what Bilam advised Balak, the king, was to get the Jews involved in immorality.
Mm-hmm.
Did we do this last week?
No,
we didn't do it. He said, get them involved in immorality. The Torah says, it's very interesting. The Talmud says that God took this advice out of the Talmud. So if you're an anti-Semite watching this video, please turn it off. Spread it around, because the Talmud says that God took it out of the Torah because we didn't want to give our enemies material.
inside scoop on how to destroy.
Right. The inside scoop on how to destroy the Jews. So he said, get them involved in immorality. So the king said, what are you talking about? Get them involved in immorality. Well, it doesn't bother us. Right? So he says, no. With the Jews, it'll destroy them. Because a Jew only thinks about doing the right thing. That's all he thinks about. Now, Jews, listening to this, go, no, I don't think about this. You don't call it the right thing. Right? You don't call it that word. No one's calling it, I'm being an Eved Hashem. I want to be a Kiddush Hashem. They're not thinking like that, but they're thinking that everything they do has to be right, has to be justified. And if it's not, then they make a circle around themselves that this has got to be right. And that's a distinguishing point of whether you're being honest with yourself or not. But nevertheless, so for example, right? For example, there are gay shuls, and it's not true that there's Reform, Conservative, Orthodox. Every shul is its own movement. Every shul. Oh, here's the shul we speak a little bit. Here's the shul we don't speak at all. Well, we do when after Elena we'll speak, but then there's the shul we don't talk at all. And here's the shul where we have big kiddushes, and here's the shul that we're not so you're bringing Shabbos late, but take it out early, whatever, right? The rabbi doesn't talk about things that upset you. Here's the shul talks about politics. Every shul is its own movement, its own religion.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have that by the non-Jewish world. In the non-Jewish world, you have the Catholics, and you want to play around outside of what you're supposed to do, so you just do it, right? But the Jews, they make a movement around it. So whatever it is they want to do, right? You want to marry out, so we now have a movement that says you can marry out, and your kids will be Jewish.
Must have legitimacy.
Must have legitimacy. So what happened? So Balak the king, he sends out his daughters, the girls, to entice the boys and to worship idols. Like, you want to marry me, you want to be with me, you have to worship this idol. So Zimri goes and he finds Cosby, right? And so what does he do? This is it for him, right? But that's not what he does. What he does is he has to do it in the town square in front of Moshe.
In your face.
In your face. You follow? Rabbi, right? I'm the conservative rabbi. In your face. I want to be, right? It's gonna be right there. Right? You gotta do what I do. It's not, I don't want you to do what you do, right? In the waiting room. Everybody's gonna do what I do. Because I'm right. I have the truth. This is the right way to go. And if you're not doing what I say, then you're an apicos, you're evil, you're bad, etc., etc., etc.
Yes,
right? So
I'm like that. I'm told that I'm like that.
Every Jew's like that. Right? Every Jew's like that. That's how we are. Right? That's a meaningful thing to be. That's what it means to be a Jew. That's why they hate us. Because it's not enough that you whatever it is, you have to believe it too. Right? Jews are on your case. They hate it. They just want to be left alone. Right? So there's no such thing as a bad Jew. That's what we talked about last week.
It's exhausting.
It's a little tiring. That's true. I'll give you that. So this week, Pinchas. Right? Now, Pinchas is an incredible parsha. It's one of the very few parshas that's named after a tzaddik. Doesn't Abraham didn't have one, Isaac didn't have one, Jacob didn't have one, right? It's mind-boggling.
Yitro,
right? It's one of the few parshas that are named after a tzaddik. Yitro gets one, Sarah gets one. There are a few, but it's not a lot. Right? In the ancient world, you must have given a big check to the United Egyptian Funds or something, right? They've got a plaque of, right, to get a parsha named after you. Not only that, but the parsha starts out like Pinchas, right, gets a brit shalom, right, which is the Talmud explains was he never died. Right? He's the only person who's not born outside of Aaron. Right? After the kahuna had been established, he's the only person who was not born a Kohen. He's made a Kohen. Mind-boggling. He saves the day. That's what the Torah says right at the very beginning. Pinchas saved the day. He's the hero. He's the most effective leader the Jewish people have ever had in the Chumash. Maybe in the whole of Tanakh, and maybe ever in history. Right? So the Torah is making a very important point, because in this week's Parsha, the next leader after Moshe is appointed. And who is it?
Joshua.
Joshua. You see, so obviously, this is one of those Parshas that so points out that the Parsha is a Parsha. That there's one whole idea, a theme going throughout the whole Parsha. It's telling me to tell you something. Because it's so obvious that the Parsha is coming to tell you a point. If it's coming to tell you that democracy is as Winston Churchill said, democracy is the worst possible system of government that was ever invented, except for every other system. I mean, it's stupid on stupid. And imagine you're going to make a decision about anything in life, whether it's medical, whether it's financial, whether it's raising children, whether it's getting married, whether it's not getting married, whatever it happens to be, right? You don't take a vote.
No.
Right? You call up, if it's a medical thing, you call up your doctor. If it's a financial, call your accountant, right? You understand? You don't make a vote with like the janitor and the next door neighbor. Right here, the most important decisions of the country are being decided upon by people who are like stupid on stupid. Like, how do these people ever vote? Right? And it somehow works. But here in this week's Parsha, it's coming along to point out that it doesn't always work. And you would never have picked, if there had been a vote, Pinchas would have won if there had been an election.
Right,
And he
because he
wasn't gonna-
appears to be the right leader, but that being a leader for an hour is not a leader.
Exactly. And that's the point the Torah wants to make. Leadership has very little to do with getting it right. This is something that America does not understand. The Western world does not understand. Because the Western world is founded on Christianity. And Christianity, they believe in somebody who was perfect, who never got it wrong. So all their heroes, all the Hollywood heroes, all the superstars, right? They all get it right. Captain Kirk and Superman and Batman. You never saw Brad Pitt get off at the wrong floor, dial the wrong number. Right? They're all perfect because they do 20 takes before they get the final version that's fit for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they think that leadership, and it's unfortunate that the president of the United States has to falls into this problem. They think that leadership is always getting it right. Right? Leadership has very little, pitifully little to do with getting it right. Leadership is all about what you do when everything goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's leadership. Who typifies a great leader? A mother. Sometimes a father. Right? You're not a mother. You don't qualify as a mother because you have any specific skill set in raising children.
Yeah, no certificate, nothing, no training, nothing.
Nothing. Right? What qualifies you a mother? You're willing to do whatever it takes to make it work.
Even shafting yourself. And I don't mean like really shafting. I mean like your ego and everything.
And everything, right.
Yes.
And
I recently suggested that to someone. I don't think they understood because they're not married and they don't have kids.
Right. If you don't have kids, you don't understand it 100%. Right. But that's leadership. Right. And a lot of people are not wanting to do it.
That's exactly what I said to them. I said, sometimes I don't want to do it. Sometimes I don't want to do it.
Right.
But I still do it.
But that's what leadership is. And that's why it's very difficult to find, for the president of the United States as a reference point, to find somebody who's a proper leader, because it's easy to look the part. We have such a thing called a professional politician, says the right things, looks the part, but that's not leadership. That's just not leadership.
Right. It's picking up your sleeves and getting dirty.
It's picking up your sleeves and getting dirty. That's what leadership is, right? And we all have to do that with our own lives. We all have to be leaders of our own worlds, which is, what do you do? You've heard me say this thousands of times, right? Human beings are born incompetent. It's downhill from then on. There is nothing a human being does well the first time or every time, right? There's no such thing as a mother that gets it right every time. There's no such thing as a spouse. There's no such thing as a boss, as a person, and ourselves. We don't get anything right. I remember when I was writing my book, someone recommended I read Ben Hogan's book on golf. He was a classic, famous golfer. I'm not golf. Anybody who thinks that tefillin is sort of arbitrary needs to read this book, because he has a whole chapter on how to hold a golf club.
It's very complicated.
Yeah. It was painful like anything, because I don't like golf. But how you hold the pinky, where you put your pinky in, the whole thing, right? If such things, minute things, make such a difference in holding a golf club, then for sure in tefillin. So, but he says there's one thing which is remarkable. He says there's one thing I learned from the whole book, and that is that unlike other sports like tennis or basketball or football or anything, right? You're dealing with a constant. It's the same every time.
Mm-hmm.
The ball is stationary. You're not dealing with an opponent that throws you in a wrench and you don't know what to do and you've got to figure it out. Right? Every game in other sports is a different game. There's no two games that are the same. So you're trained for everything. So anyway, but golf is not like that at all. The ball is stationary. The golfer is stationary. He's held this club. Is his golf club. Right? There's nothing random in this at all, right? And he's
weather. Doesn't weather affect?
Yeah, there is a certain variable, but a very minor variable.
Okay.
But that's not the variable that makes the difference, right? Mm-hmm. So he's done and he's practiced this move thousands of times, and nevertheless, he cannot predict where that ball will go.
Mhm.
Every time is different,
Mhm.
right? Animals don't have this problem, right? You never saw a squirrel miss a tree, right?
Mhm.
They do everything perfect, perfect, right? We are born incompetent because that is what it's about. Because leadership and growth and our path in life has nothing to do with getting it right. It's what you do when it all goes wrong. And some people go into denial and they hide from it and they cover it up, and that's what their focus is. And some people go, okay, I messed up. What do I do? How do I pull this all together again? And
Mhm.
those are the people that have great lives.
Mm.
Enjoy.
That was good. Too much to think about.
That's the plan.
A lot to think about. A lot of good stuff to think about.
That's the
Thank you.
idea. Okay. Let me